Hello, welcome to the Michael Cisco show. Kurt seems amused by my little introduction, my little intro video there. I heard that today I will be making a lot of friends in the Bitcoin world. Welcome to the show, Kurt Wuckert. Did I say that right?
Wuckert.
Wuckert.
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to the old country, it would certainly be Wuckert, but I'm very American, so Wuckert works just fine.
Wuckert. Well, welcome to the show, Kurt Wuckert Jr. Apparently a cryptocurrency historian, so I'm very excited. I for one, am what I would classify as a complete dummy when it comes to cryptocurrency. I've just get some crypto, okay, and I can barely do that. So I'm kind of excited to, I guess, introduce my audience to this, especially probably a bit of an angle that they haven't heard. So,
Sure.
Could you quickly just kind of give us a rundown and introduce yourself?
For sure. So, as you mentioned, I am I like to call myself a Bitcoin historian, but I'm certainly a historian of all things crypto and everything else. I'm actually a former security professional, worked in IT, security, cybersecurity specifically. I've also worked in the marketing space and a bunch of stuff, but I'm a Bitcoiner since 2012. For me, Bitcoin was always a means of exchange. Somebody paid me in some Bitcoin in 2012, and that's what got me started down the rabbit hole. I have experience mining Bitcoin, GPU and ASIC mining. I've worked in the development space. I've worked on the financial side. And now I work with a company called CoinGeek at coingeek.com as a full-time historian. So I spend my days going back and reading the old forums, the old blogs, the old, back when people did not have strong opinions about Bitcoin, which wasn't very long in the Bitcoin space, unfortunately. But I was a big player, maybe not a big player, but I was active in the scaling debate. And I've ended up on the big blocker side of the scaling debate, which is the less popular side. But I would argue that I am as much or more of a real Bitcoiner than many people would like me to be. So, but I have experience in a whole bunch of things. So I mined Ethereum when most people didn't know what Ethereum was. I've mined a little bit of Litecoin back in the day. I've worked as a fundamental analyst for a trading group and hedge fund. So I've had to be very, very keenly aware of the fundamentals of a lot of different blockchain assets. So I'm very much a Bitcoin protocol maximalist. I'm a big believer in the power of Bitcoin as a fundamental tool for the future of mankind. But I'm also much more aware of what's going on in a lot of altcoin spaces and even the pre-Bitcoin history of cryptocurrency as well. I'm pretty well versed, so I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I host my own podcast weekly and stuff too. So I do a live Q&A session every Tuesday. It's the CoinGeek live stream, and you can find me on Twitter and everywhere else. My handle is on screen here. So by all means, follow me, send me DMs. I'm happy to chat with most people as long as you're friendly.
Yeah, see, I'm a geek too, just different things. I was reading this as I was waiting for you, but yeah.
There's do you know what the Byzantine generals problem is?
Which one?
So it's actually a computer science problem, but it's based on the concept of Byzantine generals surrounding a city. So they can't communicate directly because there wasn't technology for that. So you'd have to send riders. Well, each general would have their own riders, and when a rider shows up to each individual general, you have to trust that that rider is actually on your side or is on the side of the general who you're working with. So you have an innate information problem trying to sack a city if you can't communicate directly. And it's a problem that really was never solved until Bitcoin came along. Bitcoin arrived to solve the Byzantine general problem with a computer science problem or computer science solution called proof of work. So this is Bitcoin mining. Long story. We don't need to go into the Byzantine generals problem. I just brief segue there.
That's funny.
Not a lot of fun unless people are super into the idea of mining. But We can touch on it later if you want.
Yeah, I didn't even know that there was a pre-Bitcoin crypto history. So
Oh yeah.
so for those of us clueless noobs, I mean, what even is crypto, and how did it originate?
So crypto, I mean, we can get into the Greek. Kryptos is to hide, or the hidden, in ancient Greek. So we can go back to the Byzantines again, I guess. But um, it just means hidden, or encrypted is the term, where we get this. I think people understand what encryption is. So I mean, the history of that goes way back. We could start at Julius Caesar and the Caesar cipher, for sending encrypted letters to his troops, but that's probably a little too far back for a Bitcoin conversation. But truly, we can go to the 1940s. We can talk about Alan Turing, who's really the father of modern computing. Alan Turing helped crack the Nazi Enigma machine, which is what they used to communicate with each other over secure lines or unsecure lines. The Bomba was basically a giant mining machine designed to crack encryption. And from that, developed all kinds of computer science. We can fast forward into the 70s, 80s, and 90s when PGP was created. PGP stands for Pretty Good Privacy. Computer science people, if they have to communicate and prove their identity, will often use PGP keys. So if you have something important to send across a network, here's my PGP signature. You can prove that it's me that sent it, or at least that my keys sent it. From there, in the 90s, there was a lot of libertarian activism among the cypherpunk scene, is what they were called, and a lot of people started to create their own digital cash. So there was various DigiCash, eCash. There was the Liberty Reserve. Guys like David Chaum, and a number of others. Eamon Gunn-Serrer is another one. He invented a cryptocurrency called Karma back in the day. I want to say it was the late 90s or early 2000s. But they all failed because they failed to solve what's called the double spend problem. So if you have a digital ledger, you need to trust somebody to account for it. When you swipe your Visa card, you move numbers around on a digital ledger, but you trust that Visa does their job well. And if they don't do their job well, they're insured, and these are centralized payment systems. In Bitcoin or in digital currencies, you have multiple ledgers, and you've got people that you have to trust, but you don't know who they are. You can't sue someone if they screw you up, either maliciously or through incompetence. So they just always kind of broke down because, hey, my coins are missing, or he didn't receive my payment. Who do I go to? And then people say, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm not going this direction. Well, what Bitcoin did is they added Satoshi Nakamoto was the pseudonymous creator of Bitcoin, solved the double spend problem through proof of work. So whoever puts the most work, and this is a computer like CPU power, into the network to account for the ledger the fastest or the best or the most efficiently, that's who you trust to have the most accurate version of the ledger. And if other people disagree, they split off. They become a separate network with a different set of ledger rules. But Bitcoin, its big thing that Bitcoin solved was the double spend problem, and showed that you could actually have a distributed, decentralized, headless digital currency system that allowed people to do payments and a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's kind of the very brief history of cryptography and turning into Bitcoin.
I'm interested. I mean, I'm kind of intrigued that it was a bit of a libertarian in its origin. Obviously, I'm not a libertarian, but I mean, I understand. I think we all kind of have libertarian ideals, in the sense that we want that sort of freedom from the machine type thing, especially if you're a political dissident or something, which
Sure.
Which I think has been part of the appeal for a lot of the right, to be honest.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I know that even a lot of my friends and associates kind of promote it as a means to gain freedom from the system. Has it accomplished that, or especially like the mainline coins, or?
I don't think so. And I actually don't think that that's necessarily the goal. I think it was the goal for a lot of the older coins. Bitcoin, a lot of people wanted Satoshi Nakamoto to be sort of an anarchist revolutionary, and I don't think Satoshi really was. So he paid a little bit of lip service and said, "Hey, the central bank can't debase this currency because they would, they would need to mine it in order to do that." And but he was not at all a passionate libertarian. He wasn't even particularly activist. He really seemed interested in the technology and innovation and what it was capable of from more of a business perspective. And that actually put him at odds with the early Bitcoin community, who were largely crypto anarchist types. They were dark web software hacker types. And they were like, hey, no, we need to take down the central banks. And now we have our own money and all this stuff. And that was kind of the appeal to them. And so there was a big split between the creator of Bitcoin and his vision versus the people that created like dark web business, like the Silk Road and things like that with Bitcoin. So I think it's interesting that Bitcoin was initially released with a very powerful script stack above the basic network function. So it was programmable money. It was essentially a general purpose computer distributed across global nodes, which means, well, you can program applications and smart contracts and tokens and escrow and all kinds of interesting business application stuff there. But everybody else was just obsessed with extreme security and this notion of immutability, which makes it a really great tool for crime, unfortunately. And Satoshi's last words before going away were to the guy who he handed the keys over to, a guy named Gavin Andreessen. This is in I believe it was early 2011. And the last thing he said was, please stop referring to me as a shadowy figure. Like we should be talking about our computer science accomplishments and liberation of the data economy, essentially. Like you thank your developers for helping create something cool, but please stop referring to me as a shadowy figure or Bitcoin as a shadowy thing, because it was never meant to be. And a lot of people like to erase that history of Satoshi Nakamoto because a lot of people saw it as a really convenient way to launder money and facilitate illegal business. And I think it's a really unfortunate segue. And I think we're still actually living in the consequences of that, which is to say that Bitcoin isn't used for a whole lot other than this sort of interesting investment vehicle, or there's still quite a bit of crime occurring with Bitcoin and the other assets that are based on Bitcoin. And I think it's a real travesty. Personally, I don't I don't like it at all. We could be living in a much more interesting, efficient, fair, transparent world if Bitcoin was used the way Satoshi intended it for it to be.
Yeah, well, I think my initial attraction to the concept, even though I never obviously became proficient, but just politically, as you know, I'm a political theorist, basically. I've always opposed the whole fiat currency thing, and like I've wanted my currency to at least have value attached to scarcity, at least, if not attached to some sort of substance that had natural scarcity, like the gold standard or whatnot, which is open, I understand, to manipulation as well. And there's things that you can do to mess with the gold market and silver market. But that was kind of my initial attraction. And then I don't even know enough about crypto to know that whether or not that's even a real thing. Is it is it a like a non-fiat currency that has like a set limit that can't go past? And then like when people talk about like limits for mining, I get confused and I'm like, but wait, I thought it was like serialized. I don't get it.
Yeah. No, I understand. And there's a lot of this, and I think a lot of this is it really shows a lack of maturity in the blockchain economy anyways, is that people aren't describing it well, because I think a lot of people don't understand it as well as they think they do, but they're in this position where, well, I'm an influencer and hey, it made me really rich, so I need to just kind of keep this ball rolling. And I think a lot of people are afraid to be honest about a lot of the limitations and a lot of the real game theory that someone like yourself, someone who's not full-time in computer science, for example, has time to really dig into. But Bitcoin is provably scarce. There are 21 million coins that are broken into 21 quadrillion total subunits. So the actual smallest thing is, we call it the Satoshi in honor of Satoshi Nakamoto, but it's a micro, it's a very tiny bit of data, essentially. And there's 21 quadrillion of them that make up the entire supply of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is mined, so every 10 minutes, a block is reconciled on the ledger, and whoever reconciles it is given a payout, a subsidy from the network. Initially, it was a 50 coin per block subsidy because Bitcoin was very inexpensive. It was low value. And the idea was that the value of the coin would go up, and therefore the amount of coins would go down on a very set schedule as well. So every 4 years, every 210,000 blocks, there is a halvening of the subsidy. And Satoshi told everybody, hey, we need you to convert from this bootstrapping subsidy that's built in, and you need to figure out ways to use Bitcoin more and more in business because fees need to overtake the value of the network subsidy. So Bitcoin itself is provably scarce. You can audit it yourself. The honest nodes of the network provide the data to the users of the network. Amid the Bitcoin scaling war, I call it the Bitcoin civil war, there's debate about the best way to do that. So whether an individual should run his own full copy of the ledger or whether we can trust the miners to do such a thing. And there's consequences to both directions of that. But that itself could be a 5-year-long podcast because it's been a 5-year-long debate. But not all blockchains have that kind of scarcity. So Dash, for example, is a competitive currency, only has about 7 million coins, whereas something like Dogecoin has an unlimited supply of coins, and I believe 10,000 coins are minted every block, which is every 2.5 minutes. So 10,000 new coins enter circulation every 2.5 minutes on Dogecoin. Those numbers might be wrong. It's changed in the past, so I apologize if that's inaccurate. But it is an unlimited supply, and it has a different use case. You look at it and say, well, it is intended to be used for payments. It's not necessarily supposed to be an investment asset, so it's inflationary to encourage circulation, and a lot of economic discussion and debate that goes into that. And then you have something like Ethereum, which is a totally different concept. So Ethereum is basically a worldwide virtual computer, essentially. It's a big computer. And it also has an unlimited supply, but it's because the Ether tokens are supposed to be used as gas to deploy applications. It's not really supposed to be used as money, but you can build money on it, is the idea. The problem with Ethereum is that for a world computer, it has about as much horsepower as a graphing calculator. So it's not... It's more of a proof of concept network that has somehow exploded into being the number 2 blockchain in the world. But if it's congested and you attempt to, if you were to try to spin up a wallet right now on Ethereum, you could pay between $100 and $500. I've heard about an $800 wallet being generated. So the cost is simply $800 to make a wallet, and it's because the congestion says, hey, sorry, the toll is going way up because there's too many cars on the highway here. But truly, it's just a bunch of weird crypto people using it. So to discuss bringing it up to global scale is pretty silly. But I have my own opinions on how to scale and the right direction for scarcity, scalability, and all of that. But if you want to hear about it, I'm happy to answer those questions too.
Well, I know that you did kind of allude to Bitcoin not accomplishing what it, or crypto accomplishing what it set out to. But what is Bitcoin SV, and why are all my Bitcoin friends gonna hate me for even talking about it? Why is this so controversial?
So, this is a fascinating story, but like I said, Satoshi Nakamoto didn't like the crime culture of Bitcoin. However, it was the predominant cultural narrative that, hey, we need a lot of distributed nodes. We need to make sure that Bitcoin can't be censored. In order to make it that we can't censor it, we need to keep it slow and small enough for people to run their own nodes and create this their notion of perfect security. And when you make those decisions, it's made it that Bitcoin can't do BTC can't do more than 5 transactions a second. If everything is perfect globally, it can do 7 transactions a second. So that's 6 megabytes per hour globally that can be pushed across the network, which is, what is 6 megabytes worth? It's probably incalculably low amount of pennies, but for some reason, BTC transactions are extremely expensive to use this ledger with such weird limits. There were always people on Satoshi's side as well. So Gavin Andreessen was the lead developer. Another guy named Mike Hearn, Jeff Garzik, and a few others were Bitcoin developers who proposed immediately, well, we need Bitcoin to have bigger blocks. So rather than 1 megabyte every 10 minutes, we think Bitcoin should be capable of 2 megabytes per block, which is 10 minutes. And so they just made simple proposals. Well, they kept getting voted down. The other developers kept saying, no, that's going to cause a security concern. People will be able to push too much data across the network, and it'll be too hard for people to run distributed nodes. And that became this giant fighting point for a very long time. And over the years, BTC developers just continued to change the protocol fundamentally, but under this premise that the 1 megabyte block limit must remain permanent. And so there was this massive debate. There was a giant censorship campaign. If you were to listen to computer scientist and cryptographer Ian Grigg, he'll tell you people died for Bitcoin. People, it's sad. Like it's been a big problem. In 2017, it culminated into a giant split of the network, wherein the fork Bitcoin Cash was created. Bitcoin Cash was super contentious because they believed that let's try an 8 megabyte block, but otherwise it's just Bitcoin. So this is the Bitcoin rule set, and good luck BTC with your permanent 1 megabyte blocks forever. And we're going to try an 8 megabyte block and see who uses it. Well, unfortunately, the BTC side of things was funded very heavily by Mastercard Ventures and a bunch of other players who really fought to keep BTC small, Bitcoin small, mostly because I think they would be a giant competitor, obviously, to MasterCard. If we have a global payments network that's decentralized, that's a big problem for MasterCard's market share. So they started buying Bitcoin developers and all this and kind of fomenting these debates. It seems pretty clear. And so Bitcoin Cash split, and the price of BTC went up very, very rapidly at that point. And a lot of people just said, oh, well, hey, I'm going to get rich if I hang on to my BTC. So I don't really care about this Bitcoin Cash thing. But Bitcoin Cash didn't perform poorly either. It was not a bad investment, but it underperformed BTC. About a year later, the Bitcoin Cash community split again because the Bitcoin Cash developers did not want to raise the block size. And so about half the community said, okay, well, we need to take the next step. We're trying to build a Bitcoin that can handle global payments and be this distributed supercomputer and all these really cool things. And about half the community said, no, there's not a reason to do that. And so the Bitcoin SV side, led by a small group of miners, the biggest miner is, or was at the time, CoinGeek, which is the company that I work for now, and computer scientist Dr. Craig S. Wright, who has claimed to be Satoshi Nakamoto, which is a very contentious claim to make, and a lot of people really dislike the nature of all that. We were forced off the network, and really Bitcoin SV was created against our will in November of 2018, and we have been a separate network ever since. Now, Craig proved to 5 or 6 people privately in 2015 that he was Satoshi Nakamoto by signing with the Satoshi keys. This included Gavin Andreessen, John Matonis, who was at the time the head of the Bitcoin Foundation. He's also one of the creators of Hush, which is a cryptographic protocol. He's a pretty high-level dude himself. And then Ian Grigg, who I mentioned a moment ago, is probably the greatest living computer scientist, probably the greatest computer scientist since Alan Turing. So Satoshi or Craig proved himself to Ian Grigg. Ian Grigg would have been the most difficult person to fool. And so Ian wrote a number of blog posts about it saying, hey, he's Satoshi. There's no way he's not Satoshi given what I've seen. And then a number of other people, Calvin Ayre, Stefan Matthews, a number of other significant people in the space. But immediately, all of those people were ostracized from very important decisions because, like I said, Mastercard Ventures has a very big stake in a lot of Bitcoin business going the direction they want it to. And so the people who came out to say, hey, Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto, all of a sudden they were kicked out of some very important and prestigious positions. And Craig went into hiding for about 6 months at that point. From there, he reemerged on the BBC to do a signing. There was a PR firm that messed with him, and he went back into hiding again for a little bit. So Craig has had a very, very difficult journey. And amid that, he's become quite prickly and, holds a grudge about a number of the people that destroyed the thing that he created and really, destroyed this notion of a global ledger of truth and being this global payments network. And now most people just see it as, well, it's an investment, it's digital gold, and that's really all I need it to be. But Craig is an ideologue. He wants Bitcoin to be connected to everything. He wants everybody on Earth to be making 1,000 transactions a day and not realize it. And so he's hated for it. A lot of that led to him suing a number of people for libel. There's been a lot of patent disputes. He's being sued by one of the other people that was allegedly involved very early in Bitcoin creation, Dave Kleiman, who died, but seems to have been involved in some of the software development that went into Bitcoin. He's being sued by Dave Kleiman's brother, Ira, for 500,000 Bitcoins. So something to the effect of $30 billion in the state of Florida. So Craig is involved in a lot of very high profile, very, very expensive lawsuits. And a lot of people look at Craig as a giant scammer and a giant liability to the entire crypto economy because he is. We don't need 6,000 cryptocurrencies. We have Bitcoin BSV that is capable of doing everything all of them is capable of combined and more. So we're a giant existential threat to a lot of very powerful people and their little pet projects. So that's kind of the story there.
I guess my takeaway is, I'm obviously kind of a right-wing guy, and being anti-globalist is always so crypto kind of presents us with an opportunity to separate from the international banking system. Mm-hmm. And what it sounds like you're basically telling me is that the mainline coins, especially Bitcoin, have been co-opted by the same system that we are trying to escape from.
By and large, yes. So just looking at, if anybody wants to look into it, Mastercard helped create a company called Digital Currency Group. If you look at Digital Currency Group, so they're at dcg.co. If you go to their portfolio page, you can see every company invested in by Digital Currency Group. And it includes Coinbase and Kraken and BitGo and Fireblocks and Abra and Robinhood and Blockstream, which is the biggest developers of BTC, as well as Lightning Labs, which are the developers of Lightning Network, and about 100 others. So essentially every single significant player in the mainstream crypto economy is connected to big old world venture capital, the old banking system. And it's my belief that they are essentially an astroturf bit of controlled opposition that ultimately the money funnels back up to the big old banks, the big old insurance companies, and the big old payment processors. And I think it's a giant travesty.
Yeah, and then these are the same people who, ban wrong thinkers from using their
Yes.
services. Like we see people debanked or kicked off a Mastercard, and so
Yep.
obviously this would be concerning for uh, for me, who I have plenty of friends who view cryptocurrency as an escape from that and an
Sure.
alternative, especially with being kicked off of conventional payment
Mhm.
processors and whatnot.
Yep.
So they obviously they turn to Bitcoin and you
Yeah.
know. So
I think a
what
good
would
I was
uh,
going to say a good example of that is Gab. So Gab was deplatformed by, I think it was Mastercard, about 2 years ago, and they made a big push. Like, all right, we're going to move to Bitcoin and Lightning Network, and I started posting to them on Twitter and saying, "Hey guys, Mastercard deplatformed you, and Mastercard is the largest partner in those solutions." And well, I got blocked by them on Twitter for letting them know, but yeah, it's sort of a meet the new boss, same as the old boss kind of situation there.
huh? Well, I mean, I can understand. I think when people are so invested in something that they don't that it's human nature to not want to I guess bet against yourself or
Sure.
acknowledge the that.
No,
So
I understand.
myself, I'm just a broke guy in every way possible. So I have no skin in the game, so I can just be objective. But
Yeah.
what is it that I guess practically speaking, um, what can BSV do to kind of play to help guys like me out
Mm.
who are banned. Well, I'm not banned yet, but I mean it's something that I wake up and think about, you know.
Sure.
But like for people who are debanked and looking for
Mhm.
alternatives to the system, how does BSV help us?
Well, I think there's a few. For one, I think Twitch is a good example. You and I have connected on Twitch, and they are a completely on-chain social network. You own your own data because you own your own keys. Even if let's say the Twitch interface were to collapse and disappear, you still have access to all of your interactions, and a client can be spun back up to interact with all of what you've done with your Bitcoin keys. So you own your history of communication, and somebody with a little bit of development skill can just reconnect your keys back to that data, and you can essentially spin up a Twitch 2.0, and there you go. You're back online and whatever. But you can even interact with that data right now outside of Twitch. So they can't censor you. They can't stop you from using their platform because it's just a window into Bitcoin, and that's a really powerful tool. So the DM feature, the chat, Twitch chat they call it, is AES encrypted, secured. It's on distributed nodes. It's more secure than Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp, and some of these other, again, which WhatsApp is actually owned by Facebook, and that kind of thing. So people that are concerned about being censored by big tech, think that WhatsApp is this great encrypted app, but truly there's a trust model there with Facebook. But with Twitch, you're communicating over Bitcoin and using your Bitcoin keys. And you can burn that chat too. If you remove it encrypts, burns, and it's gone too. So we're talking, CIA quality encrypted chat over Bitcoin SV. And that's just one small thing. You also have access to your money under any situation. So you can use a wallet like Simply Cash, for example. It allows you to connect to Bitcoin SV. You can accept payments anywhere in the world. It's as easy to do business in South Korea as it is in South Carolina. Nobody can stop you from doing anything outside of some kind of giant global coordination of miners and businesses, and it would have to be worth a lot of money to slow you down. So if you were some kind of $50 million a month human trafficker, maybe they could figure out a way to stop you. But for your typical person, even just trying to avoid censorship and living in a way that is unbanked, you're much more secure than you would be in the global economy. But a lot of people are afraid of the volatility of Bitcoin, and that would include Bitcoin SV. But Bitcoin SV is also a fantastic tokenization platform. So if you wanted to create a special purpose sound money, you mentioned the gold standard. Well, if you wanted to start a gold bank, you could frankly do it. So maybe you've got 1 ounce of gold and you want to turn it into 10,000 units and then just conduct business using that piece of gold. You can do that in tokens on top of Bitcoin SV, and there you're sending microtransactions of gold across the network that are infinitely auditable. It's a difficult word. Fungible, instant to send, practically free to spend, and you've just created a special purpose regional currency based on a gold reserve that you control, or a series of board members or whatever control. Or you can even tokenize fiat currency. So if you want to do your accounting in fiat, do it. Create a fiat currency token, do business in digital dollars, and settle up whenever you feel like. So a lot of options there with Bitcoin SV.
What would you? I guess I know I've heard some people say that don't get in the BSV because you think it's going to be like a growth, like something that's going to make you a lot of money. But but I've also heard like moral arguments against kind of the culture, and for one, I guess the moving away from the white papers from Satoshi. What would you? Are there any other it seems like there's, besides Twetch, some, I guess the move towards it is kind of like a utility more so than an investment.
I think, it's a scarce asset. There are 21 million Bitcoin SV units. And just like BTC, because they're both derivations of the Bitcoin protocol. There's 21 quadrillion micro units, Satoshis of BSV as well. The fact that they're scarce and the fact that they have increasing utility, and as they become adopted, demand goes up, then I do expect BSV to end up being a good investment. And you should treat it if you're going to spend it on something that's going to bring more Bitcoins back into your wallet, right? This is the same way we think about money. You can be frivolous and eat every meal at a restaurant, or you can invest your money into businesses and, hopefully you make a profit. And I don't know why people don't think about Bitcoin that way, as, when you spend, you have the opportunity to earn back with your spending, unless you're frivolous. So that's all there. I think every investment argument for Bitcoin that you've ever heard is just as relevant to BSV as it is to anywhere else. However, it's much more, the culture of Bitcoin SV is much more focused on hard work and business opportunity, where everybody else really is focused on this notion that we can absorb value forever. So you get Bitcoin, you'll often hear people saying HODL, which is a misspelling of hold, and but no discussion of work. They literally talk about, we're going to live in a space citadel because we've absorbed so much value that nobody can compete with us. But they literally are just talking about, we do no work, we just have Bitcoin, and that's it. That's all we need. And BSV says, well, it's a frictionless data tool. It is a frictionless payments network that also increases the integrity of data exponentially in a way that really can't be competed with. So if you believe that data is money and data is value, or that data is itself a sort of commodity, and I do believe that, otherwise we wouldn't be trying to resist censorship and that kind of thing. What a business opportunity. If you can secure somebody's data, or increase the ability for them to conduct business around the world, what an incredible asset that is. So very much we are a business-oriented blockchain community. More than anybody else, we want people to get out there and build something of value. So use Bitcoin to create value. If you can create value, that's what it is, right? Building businesses, creating value. We grow the pie by doing things that people can't do with other tools. And that's really how we change the world for the better.
What are some of the ways that BSV has been suppressed or kind of attacked by the let's say the mainstream Bitcoin community?
I have a whole bunch of ways. Even before BSV existed, if you were a big blocker, if you believed that Bitcoin should scale on chain, you were censored out of the major Reddit communities or Bitcoin Talk. These are the places where the developers would go have conversations about the roadmap of Bitcoin. And if you didn't agree with the worldview of the inner circle, the intelligentsia, you were immediately cast away as some sort of apostate and sent away, be gone, big blocker. And so that started way back. I'm talking by 2014. There was a major backlash because of all the censorship across development forums and a lot of the chat forums and stuff. So that goes much further back than Bitcoin SV. But in the 2.5 years since Bitcoin SV has been a separate network, we've seen everything from just complete lack of coverage in the mainstream crypto news, which also isn't surprising because CoinDesk, for example, is owned by Digital Currency Group, which is owned by Mastercard. So we see that kind of censorship in the media, LARPing as, hey, we're disruptors, but actually they're a propaganda machine for the big credit card companies. And but even just yesterday, somebody pointed out an Australian. She's basically a representative in Australia to their regulatory board in regards to blockchain compliance and blah, blah, blah. She's connected to the Australian Treasury Department in some way. And somebody noticed, like, hey, I'm blocked by my own representative of this thing. And then people started checking, and I found out I was blocked by her too. And so are all these BSV people. But she is an advocate for Lightning Network, Lightning Labs, and all of these different things that are related to the small block, the BTC community. And so she is some kind of a advocate, and she's censoring her own constituents if they want Bitcoin to scale on chain and they haven't chosen the blockchain that she believes in. So like, there's a lot of little things like that. We've seen regulators come and fine Tether, for example, which is really the only reason why BTC is worth more than about $3,000 today, is because of all of the Tether printing, which is a derivative asset of US dollars that are, it's the fiat of fiat. So if you believe that central banking fiat currency is terrible, you can multiply that by about 1,000 and you've created USDT, the Tether coin. And they got an $18 million slap on the wrist after printing about $45 billion in fake money. I mean, they're the biggest counterfeiter in the history of the world. But the New York Attorney General's office, I mean, you have to assume if you got free money, it becomes pretty easy to bribe somebody for a slap on the wrist. And, $18 million fine's not a big deal when you can print billions of dollars at your keyboard. So there's a lot of that kind of insidious stuff, but they own all the influencers, all the biggest podcasts, all the biggest, the people that are on the shows, the Anthony Pomplianos and the Peter McCormicks and all these guys, they're all paid for by the same group of people. You can track all of their money, literally all of them, up to Mastercard, Visa, a company called AXA, which is a giant European insurance company, their ventures arm, and like 2 other venture firms. So they're all old world money that pays essentially every influencer. So when you see like, hey, we're bringing in a Bitcoin person on CNBC, and it's, it's just one more guy funded by the old world pretending like he's this disruptor, but he is their sock puppet. He is their controlled opposition. He's the AstroTurf disruptor out there telling people, hey, buy my Ponzi coin and you're going to get rich. And, that's the revolution of Bitcoin, is buy, number go up, sell someday, or live in the space citadel. So
I mean, it's almost like the thought just occurred to me that it's more of a trap. Like if you're debanked and you switch to digital currency that your enemy still controls, well, geez, the flick of a switch and you say the wrong thing, you're almost safer by just like stashing USD cash in your closet.
Yep.
So,
silver coins, ammunition.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I hope some of my friends watch this and put 2 and 2 together. Yep. But so what is your long-term prediction for the fate of crypto in general, and then more specifically, how will BSV, where will they be standing when it all shakes out?
So, I mean, this is hard. Any number of things could happen. If BTC ends up dominating the world, I think we end up living in a world very much like the movie Elysium, where the elitists live in space, and resources are essentially dead on this planet. I think it creates an incredible amount of stratification and concentration of power among people that didn't earn it, and that's about the scariest situation you can be in. Um, BSV, on the other hand, is a torch of light. We want everything. We want every bit of the economy to be on chain, interoperable. We want people to own their own identity. We want them to own their own data, own their own individual sovereignty in money and in their digital identity, which is the most important aspect of their identity in the future going forward. So, if we can onboard businesses who can benefit from that technology, that's what real disruption looks like. If you look at the history of the church, this is an example. I'm not going to go there just because I know this is a Orthodox show. I actually do this example all the time. The church does not change just because the culture changes. There is an absolute truth, and there is an absolute plan going forward for the church. And those people who think that they can change the church are wrong. They have split themselves off onto being something else. And the long-term goal truly is, well, it's hard to explain if you don't understand, your own epistemology and all of that. But for me, I look at Bitcoin as an opportunity to really usher in, the new heaven and the new earth. Frankly, it is this opportunity to fundamentally disrupt the evil of the world and the centralized powers, the people that want to keep us shackled and blinded and focused on vanity, self, ego, and everything else. And it's an opportunity to be able to truly own ourselves and to be able to focus on what matters, which is family, community, work, property ownership, and frankly, building the kingdom. So for me, Bitcoin is that opportunity. And can we lose long term? No, I think we'll win eventually. But I expect it to be, or to continue to be, a long and difficult battle.
Yeah, that's kind of how I view my my place in the political world too. I'm expecting a very long, difficult battle and victory at some point, but probably nowhere in the near near future.
Absolutely not.
We have a question from Henrik the Weekend Hezekiah. What's Kurt's opinion on Monero?
So Monero, I used to mine Monero. It's probably going back to 2015. I was a GPU miner for a while, so I mined Ethereum and Monero, which did not mine well together, but I did it anyways because I liked Monero initially. It's an extreme anonymity project. Basically, every layer of it is encrypted. All the wallets are encrypted. Everything's completely anonymous. So you can't see into each other's wallets. The ledger itself is anonymous. You can see that transactions are occurring, but you can't see the value. You can't see the sender. You can't see the recipient. It is all dark money. Does that have value? I think under extreme oppression, sure. However, I think at scale, the people that are most likely to use it are the most evil people. And if you believe that, we can talk about drug dealers and human traffickers and that kind of thing, but we can also talk about our own government. We have dark things that occur under the umbrella of the US government and the governments of the world. So this can be anything from the CIA or other rogue intelligence assets. And Monero gives them the ability to conduct a really incredible amount of illegal, immoral, rotten business with very little consequence. So I much prefer the open ledger of Bitcoin, which is most transparent in Bitcoin SV, but it's a difficult one because there are edge cases where the good guy would want to use a completely anonymous cache, and I understand that, but I think the edge cases are very much the exception. But the rule would be a lot of evil in the world occurring with a completely anonymous money.
Yeah, I mean I guess this is kind of not a planned question, but how does the IRS view crypto? Like, do you have to
Um,
report your earnings on your?
You do. So just like anything else, you pay income tax if you receive any, because it
Okay.
is income. Um, and then there's also capital gains tax. So if every time you make a transaction or you do a buy or a sell, there is either a gain or a loss, and that needs to be reported. So it's actually pretty easy. There's software out there that you can connect to your exchange accounts and you can connect to your wallets, and it just spits you out a form at the end of the year. So it's not real difficult to comply, but I understand a lot of people think of it as a way to resist, the tyranny of the IRS. I don't like the way the IRS is implemented. I don't like the politics of it. I don't like, frankly, I think the IRS is a violation of my Fifth Amendment rights and some others, anyways. But nonetheless, not willing to die in prison for it. So, I do comply and do pay my taxes. I minimize them as much as I can within the structure of the law. But the IRS is well aware of how to audit cryptocurrency, and so by all means, don't mess with the IRS. At least not at this point in the game.
Yeah, unless you get Monero. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, and I understand that. I understand people wanting to, have cash or have some income that is not privy to being, taken by the government or the IRS itself. So I don't know. I'm a big believer in organized political action. If you don't like the IRS, organize against the IRS. Like, people need to see that it's an obsolete, archaic system, and we need to be responsible enough to not have the IRS. They exist because we were too weak to resist them.
Yeah. I mean, they almost seem to have like a degree of well, I think their allegiances are pretty obvious considering who they
For sure.
under a certain prior administration to the prior administration. I think we
Well, yeah, they were weaponized. I forgot about that. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The IRS are people. I'm a big believer that organizations don't actually exist. They're ideas. Like, every government agency is as real as Santa, which is to say that they're real if you make it real. And people agree to work for the IRS, and therefore there is an IRS. But if mom and dad don't play Santa, then there's no Santa either. So that's
Yeah.
it's a maturity thing. Like, culturally, I think we need to get away from this notion that the IRS actually exists. It's just people making decisions to do this to other people.
Yeah, interesting. So any final thoughts to kind of wrap everything up?
Basically, be very careful with information. A lot of people will call me a scammer because of my association to Bitcoin SV, and that's fine. They're welcome to that opinion. But I encourage everybody to do their own research and really spend time trying to learn the truth, because the truth is buried in a whole lot of propaganda everywhere you look. And there's a gigantic culture war, and it's obvious at all levels. There's a surface cultural war, and there's a very, very deep, dark cultural war going on everywhere. And so be very careful with the information you digest, especially when things get real popular and you get every influencer and all the news and everybody's talking about, hey, this big Bitcoin opportunity or whatever else. Be very careful about the information that you let into your head, because there's just a lot of scary stuff out there. But Bitcoin, as implemented in Bitcoin SV, really is a tool for truth more than anything. And if we can implement the truth and give people the ability to conduct business globally in a way that can't be stopped by the structures of the old world, well, things get obsolete and they go away. There's a reason why we don't have a robust horseshoe business in the world today, and it's because someone said, we could put motors in wagons, and now we have automobiles everywhere. And that's really what disruption looks like. But you got to do the work, and also change is generational. Don't expect to be filthy rich and change the whole world in 2 years or 5 years or anything either. It's a lifetime of work, so enjoy the journey.
Yeah, I'm withholding an optical joke, but that has to do with international banking. But I won't say it. I won't say it. But Anyways, I think that's pretty much all I have for you. How can people find your podcast and follow you on social media and whatnot?
So I'm everywhere. My handle is right here on screen at Kurt Wuckert Jr. You can find me anywhere, but primarily Twitter with that handle. Again, you can send me DMs. You can follow CoinGeek. I do the CoinGeek live stream every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. It is a live Q&A show. Sometimes we have guests, sometimes we don't. But I take questions from the troll box, and I'm happy to chat. But please follow me on Twitter. It's a really good place to just keep up with kind of everything I'm up to. And I'm kind of everywhere. So if you just Google my name, you can find a bunch of other goofy podcasts and articles and stuff that I've done in the past too.
Well, I'll be back on Twitter soon. I left in anger after the whole, purge that was going on. I was just like, gonna purge myself. So my primary place is Telegram and Gab, but
sure.
I have a new project April 2nd that necessitates that I go back on Twitter and Facebook and all that. So if you want to stick around after we end the broadcast, I can it might actually be useful to you. So
I'd be very curious to hear
it. All right. Well, appreciate everybody watching, and I hope you guys got a little different insight than what you would normally hear, and maybe things aren't always what they're cracked up to be. So you guys, see ya next week.